They're with us every year. Howard Russell talking about mosquitoes. He's an entomologist at Michigan State University. Nice to see you in person.
Good morning, Michael Patrick.
Can't be too bad if you're in short sleeves with an open collar like that, but there have been seasons when you and I have talked on this program about how you can't even go outside in the morning or at night because they're in your ears, they're in your eyes, they're in your hair, but it hasn't been that way this year in my anecdotal experience.
That's true. We've had, at least it depends on, your specific location, but in general, mosquito populations have been down considerably from last year.
Do you have any idea why that would be? I mean, I'm happy, I guess, or should I be happy, or what does it mean?
We all should be delighted.
Okay, good.
I think primarily it's, we've had very little rain this spring, so not a lot of standing water where mosquitoes breed, and the result is very few adult mosquitoes out looking for a blood meal.
So there's no way to predict. I guess the rain is the thing that would predict it then, right?
Rain and areas where water will stand after a rain. If you recall last summer, right around the 1st of August, end of July, we had 8 inches of rain. 10 days later, we had absolutely
a swarm,
swarms of mosquitoes. And, this year we just haven't had that. We've had very little rain, very little standing water, and people have been able to enjoy the outdoors a little bit more.
I do recall spending roughly $300 on Deep Woods off last year on a golf course.
Dave Beagle, because he lives on, what is it?
Timber Ridge Golf Course.
Timber Ridge Golf Course there. So he's in the woods, and that's that golf course has a lot of trees and woods back there. And so he had a deck, right? And it's not screened, as I recall.
No.
Or is it? No. So what is a suitable sort of, is Deep Woods off a good choice? I'm not asking you to name a brand, but what are we looking for in that kind of product?
Well, I don't want to, promote one particular product over another, but I use Deep Woods off too.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. There you go.
And there are times, certainly in most springs that we have, I live south of Mason in a swamp, so I have all sorts of standing water around me. And
you'd think as an entomologist, you'd either know better than to live in a swamp or you want to because it helps your study.
Your homework is there.
Well, for a biologist, cattail marsh is pretty diverse in terms of birds, not only insects and amphibians and things like that, so it's a pretty nice place to live. But one drawback, of course, are biting insects.
I would ask about the en masse kind of eradication of mosquitoes. I got a roommate that wants to fog with this vapor fogger, or
what about those vapor fogger things like that?
And how long do they last? For sure it's great for one night, but does that stuff last?
Well, it depends on what you use, of course. And
recommend another product.
Well, last year I was considering, they have, a company sells these backpack misters. That will
you walk around with your own,
and
fogger?
It'll shoot 80 feet in the air.
Okay.
Jeez.
It's like the Terminator.
It is, really, and I was ready to pull the trigger on that. And
you literally wear this? You wear it on your body, and
wear it on
you feel like you just
has
give it a little
gasoline,
shot.
has a small gasoline motor. And
it's a jetpack.
You put it up, you put 2 gallons of juice in it.
Oh, okay.
And you walk around.
Yeah.
And you walk around and you treat the surfaces where the mosquitoes rest and hopefully kill a bunch of them off.
What about the citronella candles? When I was a kid, my grandma used to light them and say this will chase away the mosquitoes.
I haven't found them to be effective.
No? Okay, wives' tale, I guess.
I would ask you as well, what about the bug zapper? Ever had one? You always see it in the movies?
The purple thing that hangs on your deck?
My dad had one, and he loved it. Not that I went out one day and showed him what he was burning up in it, and there were no mosquitoes in it.
What was in it?
Well, there was all sorts of insects that are attracted to black light, but mosquitoes aren't attracted to black light.
So
but that didn't matter.
And things like that?
So, big June beetles would light on this thing, and it would arc, and the lights in the house would dim. And that, my dad liked that. For him, a good bug was, one that was dead.
The circuit blew. That's how you know it's working.
And is that how you became interested in becoming an entomologist?
How I became, I came to entomologist, it was pure luck. My mother met a friend in an orchard up where I'm from back when I finished up my undergrad, and her daughter was leaving a job with an entomologist, and I was looking for a job, so I contacted this guy. He hired me. A couple of years later, I was in grad school, and that's how the story
What do you
When?
make of these now? The fish flies, I think, is what they're called. I don't know what they're really called, but in East Detroit, there along Lake St. Clair, where you can shovel them up with a shovel, and they coat the street lights and the cars. And it's that time of year again too.
I get calls from those folks, and what you're talking about are mayflies.
Mayflies.
And they're a mixed blessing. One, they're a pretty good indicator of good water quality.
If there are lots of bugs, it's good water.
Particularly those bugs, because they develop in pretty clean water.
So there's really good water around the Mackinac, the Mackinac Straits.
There's some up there too. But Lake St. Clair gets it bad. I mean,
Right. So that just indicates that it's a good body of water. It's clean. There's lots of, and that's probably why the fishing's good on Lake St. Clair too.
the bad news is, I mean, you can virtually slip walking down the sidewalk. They coat
emerge.
the streets.
Right, and they coat everything.
What are they looking for? What do they want from us?
Well, I mean, these are bugs that live 2 or 3 years as larvae in the sediments of bodies of water. And they emerge, and they're adults just for a few days. The scientific name for the group is Ephemeroptera, which means living but for a few days. So the adults don't live very long.
Long enough to breed, I guess. Huh?
Long enough to breed, lay eggs, and then the cycle continues. But the most important thing they do is they provide, they're really an important element in the food chain for fish and other things that feed on those. So the people that live around the lake, I feel bad for them, but I mean, the alternative is different. I mean, if the lake was polluted, with heavy metals and things and lots of junk on the sediments, then they wouldn't have the problem. But
we're looking on the bright side of life then.
Look on the bright side.
Bugs are our friends.
Some bugs are.
Are there any bugs that creep you out still too?
Bed bugs do.
Yeah. Not a good one. I mean, that'll keep you up at night when you check into a hotel.
They do, and I've been in a couple places where they were really, really bad.
Really?
And
can you see them?
Oh yeah, and I grew up on a farm, been a carpenter. I've crawled through the worst kind of things. I'd never get the heebie-jeebies. But I've been in a couple places where there were just bed bugs everywhere.
Oh, man. God.
And I was a little unnerved.
Howard Russell, entomologist, Michigan State University. Nice to see you in person.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.